All right. Hi, folks. Let's talk about the upcoming unit, English 4, Unit 7, the Lit Circles and Book Clubs unit. So before we address this Lit Circle Book Clubs part, let's just talk about the essential TEKS of this unit. This is probably the third time this year that you've covered some sort of fiction. You did it in the multi-genre unit. You probably did in the critical lens unit. And so we're going to be looking at a few different TEKS in this unit than we did in some of those other units. So specifically how analyze how characters' behaviors and underlying motivations contribute to moral dilemmas that influence plot and theme. And then critique and evaluate how complex plot structures such as subplots contribute to and advance the action and lead to complex themes. All right. And some of the other things you might want to think about are plots that are like multiple plots that are going on at the same time, linear plots. You might also want to think about non-linear plots such as flashback and what that's doing. But subplot is going to be definitely important for this unit. But just, why do writers use plot structures that are more than just starting at the beginning and going to the end with just one story? Thinking through that. Okay. The other thing is to compose a literary analysis essay using genre characteristics and crafts. And it does say essay here, but we'll also talk about that in just a little bit. So, the spirit of this unit is definitely choice. The spirit of this unit is definitely, to fill that really big umbrella and foundational TEK of allowing kids to pick self-selected texts and read them for a sustained period of time, like you would have to do with a novel in a lit circle situation. With that being said, we know that this year has been crazy difficult. We know that there's a lot of challenges to set up a lit circle when you don't have all your kids in the building and you can't physically put books in their hands the way you would during a normal school year. So with that being said, you can do this a lot of different ways as long as you fulfill these TEKs. One, you could do full-blown choice where a kid can pick any novel they want and they can read that. You could do lit circles where you're going to kind of pick from a few selected texts and they could do it that way. You could do a whole class novel if you can get around getting everyone the same book or access to the same book. And you can do short stories, either choice, lit circle, or whole group. Short stories, as long as we're looking at these TEKs right here. All right, so think through that, especially this year. Think about what the best approach is, but know that, kind of going forward in a traditional year, because this curriculum is going to be for, 7-8 years, that we do want this to be sort of a more lit circle unit going forward. But this year, please permission yourself that's going to do what's best for you, your PLC, and your students, okay? But these are what we're going to focus on. Now, with that being said, we have a few options for your summatives. There's going to be 2 writing options for the summative, which is literary analysis. One is going to be a more traditional essay where, a kid would have to have a thesis statement and a body of evidence to, support that thesis statement using text evidence from their novel to prove that and have a conclusion. And so these questions here are based on the language of the TEKs, and they're just asking kids to sort of consider them before they start writing, right? So what moral dilemmas were in the novel? How did your characters react to that? What did that reveal about them? What does that say about theme? What else is unique about the plot or text? Your subplots or the nonlinear plot. How does that lead to theme? And then any other elements, right? Because every novel is going to have some unique aspects to it. It could be the figurative language, right? The prose style. It could be interesting symbolism or setting. And there is a sort of catch-all TEK, if you will. I believe it's 6A that addresses kind of all the things that a novel has, and students are supposed to be able to explain how they function. So, you can guide them with your mentor text, or if you're doing a whole class novel, notice a few things, or just whatever stands out to them in their own novel. And then down here is when they would write. So in normal times, because the standard actually does say essay in it, we would expect a full-blown essay from this unit. However, because pandemic times and things are crazy, we have the same question sort of done as short answer responses. So then, you're not working on having a essay with a controlling thesis statement where everything kind of fits together, which can be a little messy. In a conclusion, right now, we're just worried about really answer these questions with nicely developed, thoughtful paragraphs. Because this is a writing assessment, you still are going to want to give your students, whether it's the essay or the short answer, the opportunity to revise, um, get feedback from you and or peers in the classroom about how clear and thoughtful and concise their writing is, just like you would for anything else, because that's kind of what makes this a writing uh, job or a writing assessment, is that they're seeing how their thoughts come on paper and then trying to develop those as much as possible. Okay. So either way, whether you do the essay or the short answers, you're going to want them to do some sort of revising and some sort of conferencing with feedback from you or a student to really kind of fulfill those writing teaks. And the rubrics kind of speak to that. It's the writing rubric, compose this, and then the revising teak where they kind of have to make choices. Okay. There's also one reading summative, and the thing that makes this difference, there's two things that make the reading summative different from the writing summative. One, it's a cold read. In this case, I pulled a passage from The Road at the end when the father and son are kind of saying goodbye, and the son doesn't want to go on without his father, and he asks him to take him with him, and the dad says, "I can't do that." So there's some, you know, essence of moral dilemmas there, and so it's a cold read, right? That's what makes it a reading specific assessment, is can they read something and without any or very little context and any teaching around it, and see the things we want them to see about moral dilemma and character and things like that. So these are just a couple of questions. I believe there's 6. There might be 7 questions on there. And some of these are very kind of star-like. They're very paragraph specific, but they're meant to scaffold towards the bigger ideas of the characters, right? So why is the son listening to the response from his father? If they're thinking about these things, what does this reveal about their father? They're going to get to better and more thoughtful character development. And then you can see here that this is starting to mirror the other questions from the writing summative. What moral dilemmas do you see in this passage? And they have a space to write this. So the other thing that makes this different from the writing summative is we're not going to grade them for any writing errors whatsoever. They can write. We're giving you permission to allow them to write in bullets, phrases, not necessarily complete sentences. Obviously, if you want your kids to write short answer style responses, you can do that as well here. But really, it's just, did they understand the passage, and can they do that in any way possible? In fact, if you could think of a way to do this orally or have the kids tape their responses, record their responses, and deliver them to you, that would be fine too, right? The point of this is just, can they read this passage and answer these questions? Whereas with the writing, we really want them to develop the writing as much as they can and really work on that craft of writing. Okay, so these are the summative assessments, and the formative assessments really just break that down into even smaller chunks. They're just more scaffolded, but they mirror that as well. Okay, so since this is a lit circle unit, the thinking would be you would have your kids in lit circles in a normal year, and then you would have a mentor text that you would be using to show them all these things about characterization, subplots, and moral dilemmas, and all these other things, right? So in the full spirit of modeling that a teacher can read, use any text that they want for their mentor text, as long as the content isn't too overly mature or inappropriate for the students. I chose Seeing Unburied Seeing because it is so rich in the things that the teats ask you to do. There's a couple of subplots. There's a lot of nonlinear things happening, a lot of flashback. There's tons of moral dilemmas, really complex, rich characters, and there's also a lot going on with the settings and the symbolism. It's just a really rich text. So what I did is I pulled several passages, and Tracy helped as well, that kind of take you through the story in a way that kids can kind of follow along the strand of the plot, and also do everything you need to do with the teaks. So, and there's some mature content in this novel. I'm not going to lie to you. And I did my best to kind of work around that as much as possible and still get you the meat you needed. And if there was something that I was worried would still be maybe too mature for your kids, even though they're seniors, I put that in the classroom use. I put a disclaimer here that mature content, user's discretion, feel free to cut it if you don't feel comfortable using it. But I gave you some context before, so you know exactly what happened right before the scene. Gave you a quick summary of the scene, so you don't have to read the whole thing the first time, and then how you might use it to match the teaks or do some instruction around it in the classroom. I did that for all the excerpts. You probably still want to read the novel before you use it, or listen to an audiobook, or do some lit charts, whatever. You probably want to be more familiar with the novel than just these excerpts if you plan on using this. But you could use any a novel you want. Hamlet, whatever. Just be kind of thoughtful about the selections you're going to have your kids read, and just be really careful about using language that might be racial or political, as much as possible, especially with having kids read that out loud, or you reading that out loud to them in the Zoom scenario. Okay. But this is here for you to use to pull excerpts from. Feel free to use as many of these or as little of these as you want. But this is how you would kind of set it up, right, with the mentor text to showcase the skills that the teachers are asking the kids to master. All right, this is a sample unit calendar. You got 25 days, so you kind of do the model lesson early, at least the first one, and then you would have the kids, if they're doing lit circles by day 5, probably about 25% done with their novel, and this is when you do your formative assessment. You'd have taught here, chance to catch kids up, and then this is when you would actually assess them on the thing that you taught. Obviously, this calendar is just an example. Feel free to move these things around as much as you need to for your PLC and your students. All right, and I just wanted to show you that we really tried to mirror the questions from the summative and on the model lessons, right? So this up here is a warm-up based on a scene from Cobra Kai, the first season. So hopefully kids will find engaging. I know it's pretty big right now, and they're going to be asked to think about these questions for that. And this could be a warm-up, or this could be an extension. This could be a mini lesson, or you could take this out altogether if you think you just need to get right into the text. And then they would have the ability to ask those same questions and assess the first excerpt from the piece you saw earlier, that rationale page over here. Here are the questions. I did provide a video for background on the novel, kind of sets up a few things so the kids aren't completely confused. So you can watch that and show that to them, however you want to do that as well. All right, we have a lot of day-to-day resources here that look a little bit different than you might have seen in the past. So we got a book talk here by Northside's Vanessa Martinez now. I got to fix that before this thing goes live. She's been Martinez for a while. Don't know why it still says that. Anyways, she did a great book talk on Sing Unburied Sing. She gives a lot of context, a lot of her thinking about it. And then here's another one also by Book Riot's Rincey. She's a pretty famous book talk person. So these are for you, for the kids to gain entrance or give a little bit more context. Here are the mentor text excerpts. So these are the rationale pages, the unit calendar. I got you an iceberg analysis chart to help kids kind of scaffold to that moral dilemma. So, the part that's above water, if you know the Kelly Gallagher iceberg is the literal part, and so that would be, what is the action of the character, and just below the surface would be the motivation. Why did they do that thing? Why did they do that action? And then below that is like, what's the underlying moral dilemma that is here, to get kids kind of scaffolded, because that TEK is actually written in a pretty complex way. It used to be at English 2, before we went to new TEKs, like just what is the moral dilemma and how the characters respond to it. And this one is a little bit more like cookie crumbs that lead to that. So that's meant to help there. Barbara Bloomingdale did a great job on an infographic explaining what moral dilemma is. She also made one on metaphorical violence, because a lot of novels, right, kids always say somebody dies, have death in them, and it explains all the different ways death can look in a novel and what that means, like if it's accidental versus somebody kills somebody in cold blood or anything like that. Like, why do writers use these tools in death as a vehicle to get to theme, like, and how do they do that? It's also a complex character anchor chart, like how would you know if a character is complex? Some things to think about there. And then these are for grouping kids virtually, for lit clubs, some ideas on that, and more ideas on just how to do this. One thing I really want to point out is a virtual book tasting. This is something that Barbara Bloomingdale and Lucy Podmore, the librarian over at Clark, kind of put together, and I played with it a little bit, but I promise you, this is not my thinking. This is their beautiful thinking. But the virtual book tasting is a way to kind of do the book talk thing that you or a librarian would have done by going to the library and just kind of looking at some books and going around, have a beautiful summary done by you or the librarian to to look at these things. But, in this crazy work environment, what does that look like now? So I'm going to show you an example, because this might also be, if you're thinking to yourself, I like this idea, but I don't know how the heck we're going to do this in a pandemic when most of my kids are virtual. This virtual book tasting I'm about to show you is an example of how you might go about doing that. So in the opening slide, you have these big thematic topics: family, American families, justice, perseverance, war and military reputation, and representation. So how do you go about getting, because no high school library is also going to have like 100 copies of The Hate You Give or 100 copies of Sing Unburied Sing, right? They're going to have 3 to 5 maybe. So what this does is each one of these thematic ideas has books in it, so that kids may not necessarily be talking about the same book. They'll be talking about the same theme, and also not just looking for the same things in there, but also comparing and contrasting how different writers talk about the same thematic ideas, right? So kids will have similar conversations, maybe not the exact same conversations in here, but that's the way you get around not having access to all the books that you would normally have access to if you were in this school building and kids were all in front of you. All right. So these images are all hyperlinked. If you click on them, they will take you to the individual theme and then the books that are under that theme. So as you see here, we did put some books that are already on the Knife Side approved list. Some of these books have a little bit more mature content than others. And so, if you have a parent that's worried about all those things, you can always point them to the choices that are from the Northside approved list. That way, you got all your bases covered. You definitely want to keep at least a couple of choices from the Northside approved list on your list if you do lit circles. That way you always have that to fall back on, because that has been, gone to the board and everything like that. But we do encourage some choice outside of the Northside approved list, because we do know that it's fairly dated and doesn't have a lot of the engaging texts that are out there now. But when you get to this page, so you go here, click on American Families, it'll take you to this page. When you click on any of these book covers, it'll then take you to that book, and it has a summary of the book and some opening pages from the book. And this will take you back to the home screen from this screen if you click on it, and all of the slides have that. I'll show you that here. So for example, if you click on House on Mango Street, boom, takes you to the house on Mango Street, picture of it, quick little synopsis of the book, and then if you click on the look inside here, it'll take you to the opening page of House on Mango Street, so a kid can read it and get a feel for how it is. Now, you can do this just by straight slides. You don't have to hyperlink all this stuff. But if you use this and you make a copy of it, and you just change the pictures on the slides, and you just change the text rather than delete, like if you just take all the text off and the pictures off, then you would still be able to hyperlink to your own books. And that's something that I think now I can show you, and definitely Barbara can. One cool feature that you could do if you want to get really fancy with your librarian and some of the tech people, Barbara can probably help you with as well. There is Lucy at Clark. This right here is the Clark Library. So if a kid reads this, wants to check it out, they can go straight to the Clark Library by clicking here and try to get a copy of the book. She also added, for the Clark teachers who have done this at English 3, she also added another ebook way to access them, and reviews for the book, so the kids have more information. All right, so this is how you would do, this is one way you could do a virtual book tasting. So feel free to use the slides. I tried my best to change some of these titles from the ones that were used at English 3. So your English 3 team has already gotten something like this from us, and I try to change some of the titles to match the TEKS and to kind of just give you a few different books to look at the senior level. But if you're curious, check with your English 3 team and see if they've done any of this already, see how they did this, and also check with your librarian. I know they'd be happy to kind of work with you through these things. So this is a suggestion that's working well. I know at least a third of our campuses right now have used something similar to this approach to do the lit circles, and they're having a good time with it, making it work. but I wanted to make sure you saw that resource so that you knew what it was and perhaps how to use it in your classes. But that's one way you can kind of curate a list, get enough books together that so that you have enough choices for your students, and there's still some grouping that makes sense. It's not completely wide open choice, if that concerns you. But once again, we're okay with that as well. So I hope that helps. I hope that overview helps. There are a few more resources still coming. As I finish those, I will add them and kind of let you guys know. But remember, you want to cover these TEKS. These are your essentials. The rest are here and here. You can look up these specifically when you open here. And the spirit is definitely Lit Circles next year in the spring. Hopefully everything's back to normal or very close to it, and we can really pull this off and provide a lot of support in helping you do that. But so if you can't do that this year, we understand. But next year going forward, we're gonna try to really incorporate as much choice as we can for our students. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Barbara, 'cause she's already worked with a lot of PLCs at English 3 on this unit. And also, please check in with your librarian, show them this, talk to them about how you might be able to make this work on your campus. All right. Thanks, guys.